Hey there folks, and welcome to this new mini-series, How to Survive. I'm your host Mark, and this week we'll be looking at how to survive your first Magic pre-release. So for those that don't know, a Magic pre-release is an event where players take part in a tournament and get access to cards from the next big release for Magic early. They will have to build decks comprised of boosters that they are given as part of their entry fee. Once players have built their decks, they will then compete against other players over a series of rounds, and then will be rewarded with additional boosters based upon where they end in the tournament. But everyone normally gets at least one booster. At least that's how we do it at our Harlequin stores. I can't speak to how other shops are run, but that at least gives you a general idea of how these things go. Generally, pre-releases are a great fun way to get your hands on new card sets early. So if they're so much fun, why am I doing a video titled How to Survive a Magic pre-release? Well, the truth is these events can seem quite daunting. After all, if you're getting into the hobby scene and you're hearing stories about people playing a midnight pre-release and then coming back repeatedly for Saturday and Sunday, so you're playing all weekend only stopping to eat and sleep, this can sound very intense. On the other hand, it might be the fact that you've been playing for a little while, maybe using pre-constructed decks or deck lists that you found on the internet, and the idea of taking part in this event sounds awesome, but the flip side is that you might not have the experience of building your own deck. So the idea of building your own deck and then playing immediately with it might sound a bit daunting to you. So to allay some of your fears, I've spoken to Team Harlequins and picked their brains to try and get you some pearls of wisdom that will help you see that pre-releases are a great way of getting new cards, having fun and making friends, and not something to be feared. So without further ado, let's crack on with it. So we'll start off with some advice that assumes that you have no idea of what Magic is, but you have heard of these fun-filled weekends and want to try out a new experience. My advice to you in this situation is to go down to Harlequins or whichever store is near to you and register your interest with them. Talk to the staff and let them know that you're planning on going to this event and that you have little or no experience. At this point, Team Harlequins or whichever store you go to will give you a rundown of Magic in general, as well as what to expect when you come down on the day. They will also know that you might need some more help on the day and therefore will try and keep an eye out for you to give you some help and guidance. However, please note that pre-releases are absolutely nuts. Things often don't go according to plan, and our staff often expect to have, say, 30 people turn up and will be bombarded by 50. So in addition to talking to the staff, I would advise you to go home and do a little bit of homework. This will help you to be better prepared and know what you're doing, as well as alleviate some of the pressure on the staff, as you will have at least a basic grasp of what is going on. If you haven't done so already, I would recommend going and watching my beginner's guide to card games, to at least the point where I mention what resources are available for Magic the Gathering that could help teach you the game. There are other videos and articles that you could look into, such as spoilers. These will pre-prepare you with knowledge to help you know what you'll use on the day. This will stop you tripping up on mechanics that are new to this release. Also, channels like Loading Ready Run do a pre-release where you'll get to see exactly what you'll have on the day. I'll drop a link in the description box below so you can see an example of what I'm talking about. If you know how to play Magic and you have a rough idea of what the mechanics are that you'll be using, then you'll have much more fun, as you won't be spending all of your time staring at cards trying to figure out what the hell they do. As much as that last point was aimed at people who are new to Magic, checking things like spoilers is always a good thing for any Magic player to do, regardless of skill level. Sometimes you'll need to choose a faction before you even start playing, as this will determine what you get in your box. If you've done your research beforehand, then this will help give you a better idea of what you would like to play and therefore which clan or faction you'll like to choose. Bear in mind though that you don't have to stick to whatever clan or faction you chose. Sometimes the cards that you pull from your boosters will be much better for other colour combination, and therefore you can just go with that. Don't feel that you have to stick to, say, Gruul, even though you've got really good cards for Dimir. While we're talking about being prepared, making sure that you turn up a little bit earlier so that you can buy food and drink or dice and sleeves is always advisable. Be aware that most places are happy for you to bring your own sleeves and your own dice, but that normally they are not too happy about you bringing your own food and drink. Always check with the store you're going to, don't assume that you can just bring in your own food and drink. And don't worry about having to bring in a life counter, you'll get a spin down with your pre-release pack, so that's all covered. So by this point, you know how to play the game, You've checked out what cards are going to be in the set, so you know what you're going to be looking out for, and you've got your cards, dice and nibbles. So what comes next? Well, after everyone is enrolled, a staff member will normally go around handing out pre-release packs to everybody that has paid entry. They will also tell you at what point you can open these. When it comes time to open it, don't get too excited and rip it to pieces. Well, unless you brought a deck box, that is. This is because modern day Magic sets, the boxes are always designed to carry your pre-release deck around with you for the rest of the evening. So if you rip it to pieces, you won't be able to do that. Once you've opened your box, enjoy the next few minutes. This is the really fun bit when you get to see all your new cards in person, opening your boosters and just generally enjoying the sights and sounds that are going on around you. One word of warning is try not to do this for too long. Most places give you about 40 to 45 minutes with which for you to open your boosters, build a deck and get it all sleeved. So while you're enjoying this and drinking it all in, don't take too long. Time has a nasty habit of getting away from you after all. As you're opening your boosters, our advice at this point is to separate them out into the various colours. So white, blue, black, red, green, multicoloured artefacts, lands, etc. This will help you to pinpoint which colours got the best support out of your packs. Once you've got them all opened and sorted, now is a good opportunity for you to have a look at the quality of the cards that you've got, so that you can choose which colours you wish to use. To build your deck, you'll need to keep this acronym in mind to help you prioritise which cards to put into your 40 card deck. Bread. I know, it sounds absolutely stupid, but believe me, bread is important. It's sometimes called different things across the internet, and that's completely fine. You remember whichever one you feel most comfortable with. But as long as you remember an acronym of this description that helps to break down and prioritise your deck, that's the most important thing. I will explain now though what bread stands for. So first of all, your deck needs to have B, bombs. These are the cards that will win you the game. In limited formats like drafting and pre-releases, bombs are generally big creatures. These are things that are difficult to remove, have a high mana cost, but will be very difficult for your opponent to remove. Removal in limited formats is unreliable and is often small amounts, like a couple of points of damage here or a -1/-1 counter there. Having a big creature that can withstand this kind of punishment is imperative to be your big bomb. Big bombs are great because at the end of the day, your opponent will have to use either most of their creatures, if not all of their creatures, to stop this hulking behemoth from smashing into them. And if they choose to ignore it, then that will generally be a 3-turn countdown as their life just gets smacked away over the turns. A bomb is something that cannot be ignored and must be dealt with, but will usually require quite a few cards to deal with. Alternatively, occasionally there are cards that are bombs that are spells. A good old-fashioned example of this is Banefire. Banefire is basically a spell that allows you to put all your mana into one killing blow. Spells like this aren't as popular these days as Magic likes to run a bit slower, but they do crop up from time to time, and if you keep an eye out for them, having 1 or 2 of these in your deck might really help your case. This being said though, bombs are normally very mana expensive, so you don't want too many of these in your deck. A couple is normally more than enough. Too many and you'll be clogging up your hand in the earlier turns and you won't be able to do anything with them. Therefore they may as well be a land because you can't play them and you can't do anything with them at that moment in time. So remember, no more than a few of these cards should be in your deck as they will clog up your hand 90% of the time. Next up is R. R is for removal. This is exactly as it sounds. These are spells that remove threats. Having spells that kill or counter your opponent's creatures and other permanent abilities is absolutely vital for any Magic deck, regardless of format. There are times when your opponent will drop their bomb card and you have to have some way of removing it. Maybe it's something as simple as having a 3/1 flyer, but you have no flying. You have to have some removal so that you can deal with that threat, otherwise you will die to a very small creature very quickly. Removal is vital for any Magic game, and pre-release is absolutely no exception. Instants are always best as a rule, but in a limited format where spells are difficult to come by, the Humble Sorcery will still surprise you and will definitely get you out of trouble in a pinch. So don't ignore the Humble Sorcery card, as removal is removal after all. Next up we have E for evasion. Truth be told, this doesn't translate perfectly, as not everything that falls into this category technically evades anything. But essentially, it's creatures that have abilities that will evade your opponent's defenses, or keep themselves alive. Cards with trample or flying, for example, will allow you to deal damage to your opponent despite their defenses, whilst cards with hexproof or similar will prove very difficult for your opponent to remove, especially as they will not be able to use spells. Next up we have A, which is for aggro. Generally this is smaller creatures, maybe 1/1s or 2/2s with haste, things that you can play out quickly and cheaply and do lots of damage to your opponent. However, it is not limited strictly to this. With regards to these cheaper, hastier creatures, you don't want too many of these in your deck either. They're great on earlier turns, but on later turns when you want to be hitting with some real power, having a 1/1 with haste seems rather irrelevant if it's just going to slam headfirst into a 6/6 creature. As already mentioned, aggro doesn't just stand for small creatures with haste. It also counts for things that have a good CMC conversion rate. So, for example, you have a creature that costs you 4 mana but is a whopping 6/6. This is a very good way of applying pressure even if it's only a vanilla creature. However, as a vanilla creature, be aware that even a humble 1/1 will be able to bounce it back. However, they are still important to bear in mind as they will give you better bang for your buck when compared to the candidates for the D category. As good as say a 3/3 for 2 is, try not to prioritise this over too many other cards that have, say, First Strike. A 3/3 for 2 mana will die easily to a 3/1 First Strike without doing any damage itself. So try not to prioritise too many of these over creatures with combat tricks. Lastly we have D. This stands for duds. These are basically cards that aren't particularly very good. However, if you do not have sufficient cards to fill out your deck, or maybe you have a gap in your mana curve, then one of these will be able to fill that role. Just try not to dip below the standard CMC to power toughness ratio. If something costs 3, you want it to be doing at least a 3/3. There have been cards in the past that have been, say, 5 mana that only rewarded with you with a 4/3 creature. And again, don't prioritise these over any other cards unless you absolutely have to. For example, if your deck does not have many creatures. So, thus armed with the BREAD acronym, you can now start prioritising what goes into your deck. At this point you will have looked at all the colours that you have available to you and chosen 2 to go in your deck. If you're still fairly new to drafting or pre-releases, I would not recommend going higher than 2 colours for now. Using 2 colours helps to give some strength, stability and ease to your deck building experience. So at this point, start choosing cards from those 2 colours, remembering to use the BREAD acronym. If you're extremely lucky, then you will have too many cards to put into your deck. It's always better to have more options than less. You're looking for a split of approximately 23 cards that are spells and creatures to a 17 land mana base. This will help give you your 40 card deck. It's at this point, once you've got your short list of your favourite cards, that we start talking about curve. So what on earth is the curve? So the mana curve, or simply curve, is how many cards of your proposed deck are in each CMC bracket. For those of you that don't know, CMC stands for Converted Mana Cost, and this is the amount of mana required to cast the spell. So for example, if you have a spell that is 2 green green, then that is a converted mana cost of 4, as it requires 4 mana to play that spell. So at this point, get your proposed cards that you wish to put in your deck and put them all into 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s and so on of the converted mana cost value. Most people generally do this as this is a very good way of visually seeing the curve of your mana deck. A big part of the mana curve is obviously creatures, so let's have a look at the creature aspect of it. So in an ideal world you want a couple of CMC 1 creatures. These will preferably be things that either tap for mana or have something like Death Touch to try and dissuade bigger creatures from attacking. 2 examples of this would be Llanowar Elves and Deadly Recluse. Again, you don't want too many creatures at this bracket, and 0 is a perfectly acceptable answer to this equation. It's better to have no creature cards of CMC level 1 than have a bunch of 1/1s that will just clog up your hand later on in the game when, as I've already mentioned, you want something bigger and hitting harder later on. Sure, it's great to have a CMC level 1 creature in your opening hand, but if it's not doing much for you, then what does it really matter? So again, at CMC level 2, you don't want too many creatures here, and the ones you do have, you want to have a little bit of impact. Preferably one that has flying, or unblockable, something that will cause your opponent problems for the long term. It will start chipping away now to make it an easy job to finish off your opponent later on. So in this bracket you want about 3 to 5 creatures, but again make sure they have some impact. Don't put too many bears in there. Bears being the common name for creatures that are 2/2 for 2, i.e. 2 power and toughness for 2 mana cost. They don't do anything and they'll just clog up your deck. If you have a dire shortage of creatures, sure, put a couple of them in, but otherwise leave them out in favour of things that have abilities. At CMC level 3, we're starting to see the bulk of your cards. CMC 3 and 4 both give you cards that you can play in multiples of in later turns, but generally both have a decent amount of impact when they hit the board, either doing something or being a big enough threat that your opponent will have to take care of them. And more importantly, by turns 8 and 9, hopefully you will have enough mana in place that if you do have a couple of these in hand, you can drop both of them at the same time, this giving double the problems for your opponent to deal with. The other good thing about this mana band is that if you have, say, a vanilla 4/4 for 3 mana, dropping it on turn 2, quite possible when you have 2 lands and say a mana dork out, suddenly becomes a very unpleasant thing for your opponent to have to deal with, and will make even veteran players flinch. Although, as already mentioned, in an ideal world it'll be a 4/4 with, say, trample. Again, in both bands, CMC 3 and CMC 4, you'll probably be trying to get between 3 and 5 creatures in each one, as this will help give you a reasonable defense and keep your board state stable. At CMC 5 or greater, you want these to be your game enders. These behemoths are meant to win you the game, or get your opponent to lose all of their creatures by blocking this one massive monstrosity, allowing you to finish off your opponent with all the other creatures that you have that are untouched. As with CMC level 1, you don't want too many of these creatures in your deck, as you will not be able to play them in earlier turns and they will just clog up your hand. However, unlike CMC level 1, you do really need to have at least a few of these in your deck, as these are the things that will ultimately win you the game. I wouldn't advise taking any more than 3 of these really, depending on how much mana acceleration you have. Mana acceleration, for those of you that don't know, are creatures, abilities, artifacts or spells that generate more mana for you, thus enabling you to play these bigger creatures out earlier. Depending on how much mana acceleration you have, I probably wouldn't take any more than a maximum of 3 of these large CMC creatures. With creatures done, it's now time to put spells into your deck. About 8 is advisable, with roughly the same type of mana curve. However, this is much more flexible given the nature of spells. Don't be afraid to drop a creature, by the way, if you find that you have a lot of good removal, as an extra piece of good removal will make you far more of a nightmare for your opponents than one more average creature. Likewise, if you have some good mana accelerating spells, adjust your deck accordingly. Now obviously all these values and factors are extremely loose. That's because there are many opinions, playstyles and factors in Magic that can skew or change your curves or ratios, and no one in particular is completely correct. Playing low cost spells that will help you dig through your deck to find the cards that you actually need, or maybe playing an aggressive low range deck where you're flooding the field with lots of 1/1s that use combat tricks to make bigger and kill your opponent, or maybe having a lot of control to try and slow down your opponent so that you can ultimately do the things that you are trying to accomplish. All these cards and effects will ultimately tweak or change your deck slightly in some way, shape or form, so don't take all of these values that I've been giving you as a hard and fast with no flexibility. You are absolutely encouraged to tweak here and there to do as you see fit to make your deck work. The way you play and the style of the deck that you're trying to build will influence your ratio of spells to creatures. All that I'm saying to you now are just rough guidelines to get you thinking along the right tracks. One last consideration is try not to include too many spells that have multiple of the same colour icon. Sorry, that's quite difficult to visualise. Basically, if something costs 1 mana of any colour and black, then you will no doubt have 1 swamp and 1 other land of any type quite quickly and therefore easily be able to cast the spell. But if you need something that requires 2 mana of any colour and 2 black, that will become a bit more tricky. It sounds very easy, but oftentimes you'll have 4 lands, but 3 will be a 1 and 1 of the other, and therefore you won't be able to pay the mandatory 2 of the singular colour that you need. This results in you having a card stuck in your hand that you probably should have played turns ago, so by the time you actually get round to playing it, it probably isn't in a position to impact the board state as much as you would need it to do so. Granted, in a small 2-colour deck, the chances of you getting stuck like this are slim. However, I've lost count of the amount of times I've lost matches because I've had 9 lands on boards, 1 of which was the one I needed, and the other 8 are not. Be aware of this and factor this into your deck building decisions so that you don't include too many spells, abilities, creatures, or enchantments that require you to have multiple of the same colour icon. So once you've settled on your 23 card mix of spells and creatures, now it's time to sort out your land base. So if you pulled some dual colour lands that are perfect for your colours, then great stuff, start with them first. But even then, you'll still need to figure out the correct type of lands and ratios to make sure that you'll be able to play the spells and abilities that you wish to play. So go along all the cards that you've chosen to put into your deck and count up all of the symbols in the top right hand corner. So for example, if we were doing a red-green deck and we count up all of our cards and we find that we have 21 forest symbols and 14 mountain symbols. So this means we have to divide our mana base accordingly. So for this easy example, we realise that we have a 3:2 ratio of forest to mountains. So our 17 land base should reflect this. However, don't get too bogged down in being absolutely exact. So long as they're rough, that should be more than enough. So by doing some quick mental maths, we can figure out that by adding 3 and 2 together, that gives us 5, and we can multiply that by 3, which will give us 15. That means that already of our 17 lands, we've already decided 15. 9 are going to be forests, and 6 are going to be mountains. That leaves us with 2 lands remaining, so we can easily throw 1 of each in, and that'll give us 10 forests to 7 mountains, which will give us our nice 17 figure. As with all things mathematically orientated, there are probably quite a large number of ways to do this, and different ways people remember how to do it. Choose whichever one you find easiest for yourself. Failing all that, there is a land calculator website, which I'll pop in the description box below. At this point though, you're done. There's not much left to do except sleeve and shuffle up. Please bear in mind that this video is not hard and fast. This is not the only way to build decks for a pre-release, and opinions vary wildly. This is just a beginner guide to help get your head around the basic and help you survive your first pre-release. Unfortunately, there's so much variance in Magic that only skill and hard-won experience can teach you everything that you could possibly need to know to play a draft efficiently. And I have absolutely no hopes of conveying it all in this short video. What this video is hopefully doing is putting in some groundwork so you can at least have an idea of what you're doing, as well as give you a playable deck to work with. And most importantly, help you to enjoy yourself. I'll leave you with these final tips. Don't be afraid to ask for help from staff or opponents whilst playing. Pre-releases aren't pro tournaments. They're about learning and having fun opening a brand new set. If you don't understand certain mechanics that are new to the set, or maybe even you're hazy on an existing rule, don't be afraid to ask. Most people are more than happy to help. With that being said, games and deck building are timed, as nobody wants to have an 8-hour casual tournament. So please make sure that you know at least the basic rules to a decent degree. No one is going to get upset if you need a minute to think about something. But if you don't know any rules, then diving headfirst without any preparation into a pre-release will slow everything down to a snail's pace. This is not a great way to endear yourself to others. And after all, making new friends is all part of the experience. So do yourself a favour and get the basics down, either by learning to play via a friend or staff member, or downloading an app and playing a few games that way. My next tip is, if you have time, try to take a couple of minutes to check some primers so you have an idea of the mechanics and cards that you'll be using in your pre-release. Whilst not 100% essential, this will help you to make better decisions and play better. There are loads of primers out there, and they're all designed to help new players and veterans be better prepared for pre-releases. By the same token, this video is by no means the only video out there with advice on how to deck build in either pre-release or drafting. I'll pop a few examples in the description box below, so feel free to read up and beef up your knowledge. Remember that you can change your deck between rounds. So if you want to try and add a card or two to your deck for your current matchup, or you feel your deck isn't performing how you wished it would, you can always dip back into the other cards that you pulled earlier in the evening and change your deck. Again, this is not a Pro Tour event. You're not stuck with your deck if you made a poor decision during deck building. Look after yourself and your belongings. As with all areas of life, most people that attend Magic pre-release events are lovely, and all they want to do is have a good time. Unfortunately, not everybody is so nice. Don't leave your belongings lying around while you go to the toilet, or you go up to the counter to buy a drink, or whatever. Every pre-release without fail, someone leaves a pre-release deck box lying around and then cannot find it when it's time to start the next round. Whether innocently, after all these deck boxes look the same, or maliciously, people will pick up a deck box that is just sitting around. Staff will also find deck boxes and try and return them to their original owners. However, this is difficult as no one knows what's in their deck really. You only built it a little while ago, so most people can't remember what cards they pulled and exactly what's in their deck. Avoid all this hassle and just take your stuff with you wherever you go. On the same note, if someone sees that you've pulled a nice card, don't just trade or give it away without checking the value first. Don't be afraid to ask a member of staff if a trade is a fair trade, as there are many unscrupulous people out there who will try to cheat you out of the value of your card. Nothing is worse than finding out that the card that you traded for is a very easily acquired card, whilst the card you let go is worth £50 or more. Always check the value of your card before you do anything rash. Get some rest. If you're planning on doing a midnight pre-release, for example, then make sure you go home, eat and rest up. I strongly advise on the day in question that when you get home after work or education, having a nap for a few hours, then grabbing something to eat before finally heading in to take part in the event. Being tired, hungry or both is a great way to ruin your first pre-release event. And if you decide to do every release over a weekend, then this advice is even more important. Always try your best to stay well rested and fed. This will enable you to have the pre-release event that you deserve. Other than that, be friendly and try and have fun. After all, that's the main reason that any of us are playing this game. Make some friends, have some laughs, don't take yourself too seriously, and overall enjoy yourself. There you go then folks, it's not perfect by any stretch and you still have a lot to learn, but hopefully having watched this video, you are at least armed with enough basics to know how to survive your first pre-release. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like the video, please chuck us a like, and why not drop us a comment telling us how you got on at your first pre-release. Other than that, don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you stay up to date with all of Team Harlequins videos. But most importantly, I hope all of your pulls may be good ones, and I wish you the best of luck at your first pre-release event. Goodbye folks, and good luck.